Hey everybody and welcome back to Semi Stories. Today we got a crazy story from r/best of Redditor updates where OP's mother-in-law tries to wear a white dress at OP's wedding and gets burned for it. I'm so confused, please help. I'm getting married soon and we're having a traditional wedding. I'm Indian, my fiancé isn't, but he was fine having an Indian wedding. My mother-in-law to be asked me if she could wear white to our wedding. I said sure, and now my fiancé is really mad at me. He says that she is going to try and steal the spotlight and she'll definitely show up wearing a long white dress, and it was very irresponsible for me to just agree to that. The thing is, 1, I'm not going to be wearing a white bridal dress. I'll be wearing a traditional red dress that, due to the design, lehenga, type of silk and embroidery is very distinctive, so even if my mother-in-law does wear a white wedding dress, it's not like it'll be the same. Also, this may be dumb, but I don't really get what the big deal is if my mother-in-law wears white, even if I also were going to. As long as the groom doesn't get confused and marry the wrong person, does it matter? I'm sorry if this is dumb, but my fiancé is really upset that I didn't stop my mother-in-law, and I just needed some help understanding. I never meant to upset him. OP then posted a small edit. My fiancé knows what my wedding dress looks like. He has seen it. For those asking if my mother-in-law knows how my wedding dress looks, I'm not sure. We've discussed what the wedding will be like. She hasn't been to an Indian wedding before, but I don't think we explicitly discussed what I will be wearing. I feel like she was confused when I said that she is free to wear white, but that might be me projecting because the whole conversation was just a bit confusing to me. Here's a couple of comments that stood out. Based on OP's fiancé's reaction, I'm guessing mother-in-law has a history of inappropriate and/or attention-seeking behavior, and he's trying to break that cycle. OP should talk to her fiancé to get on the same page, and maybe going forward tell mother-in-law that she has to run things by him. But see, I think her dealing and thinking she got one over just to discover the bride in red would be glorious. Upstage the upstager. I think OP's fiancé should totally lean into that. Pretend nothing's wrong. Act unimpressed, etc. Yeah, I'm guessing from this post that mother-in-law has never been to an Indian wedding and has no idea what she's in for. You gotta wake up pretty early in the morning if you want to upstage an Indian wedding party. OP then posted the update. So as you all suggested, I talked to my fiancé about why he was concerned. He explained that his mother had previously joked that she would wear white and had told her point blank that she wasn't allowed to do this. He didn't tell me about this because he didn't want to stress me out. Apparently she has a tendency to steal attention throughout his childhood, which left some trauma. So basically when I told mother-in-law she could wear white, he was very upset that I had given permission when he had categorically refused. But he admitted it was wrong of him to get that upset when he hadn't shared any of the background information with me. We agreed moving forward we would be better about communicating, and made up. But then he wanted me to call up mother-in-law and tell her she couldn't wear white or else she was banned from the wedding. Which I didn't really want to do, because that sounded like a surefire recipe for open hostility. And like I said earlier, I don't actually have a problem with mother-in-law wearing white. I told him that he was welcome to tell her if he wanted, but he was insisting I have to tell her because I was the one who gave permission. It was starting to turn into an argument, so I showed him this post and all of your great advice. This really helped. It helped him realize that even if mother-in-law wore white, it wouldn't really stand out, at least not in a positive way. And he loved your guys' idea of just not telling mother-in-law that I wasn't going to be wearing white. So we'll probably offer to buy her a sari, but if she insists on wearing a white dress, we just won't stop her. Thank you to everyone who gave advice. I'll try to update after the wedding. Then, instead of OP posting an update, her fiancé actually did. Given the way things turned out, it seemed fitting that I post this. I'm the previous poster's then fiancé. After Pia, not her real name, posted, a lot of commenters said I was wrong for not dealing with my mother myself, and I was especially wrong for getting mad at Pia without telling her anything. I didn't want to admit it, but the more comments I read, the harder it was to brush off. I don't have a good relationship with my mother. She was the type to demand gifts on my birthday because I wouldn't be here without her. For 18 years, I never got to open presents myself. Looking back, every event, from my games to graduation, was always about her. I always felt like my life and accomplishments were just an extension of her accomplishments. I think I suppressed my resentment because everyone around me always acted like this was normal. I applied to the furthest university I could realistically get in and stayed far away because anytime I had to go back home, it was the same story. At university, I was lucky enough to meet Pia, and for the first time, I started to like who I was. I didn't feel like I had to hide or downplay my accomplishments, or even my failures. And her family was so warm and welcoming, it felt like my childhood was just a nightmare of the past. I thought the best way to move past it was to just move ahead. I thought I would be able to handle it now as an independent adult. After all, everyone says you're supposed to let sleeping dogs lie. And in my worst moments, I felt jealous of my wonderful fiancé for having such a welcome, loving family, even though they were treating me like one of their own. I was ashamed of my mother's behavior and the ugliness of my resentment, so I pretended everything was fine and invited my parents to my wedding. Until this post blew up, I don't think I really understood how important my wedding was to me. I mean, obviously, the whole getting married to the girl of my dreams is huge, but I mean the actual details of the whole ceremony. I actually had a clear vision of what I wanted in the wedding, but a combination of my childhood trauma and the notion that the wedding is the bride's day and not something men are supposed to care about made me feel unable to express it. I also didn't understand how badly I wanted an event that would be about me and not my mother. This unholy cocktail of repressed and suppressed feelings led me to unfairly lashing out at Pia when my mother tried her old tricks. At that moment, I forgot white wasn't the bridal color in Indian weddings. I just felt a cold sweat that another precious moment would be hijacked by my mother. I think Pia was shocked by my outburst because she had never seen me like this, and made that post just to get some perspective. Neither of us imagined the ramifications it would have. I read every comment at least 10 times. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Unwanted memories kept invading my head no matter how much I tried to bury my head in work or exhaust myself by exercising. I ended up having an actual meltdown that night. I was sobbing and crying. It was probably my ugliest moment. The next morning, I half expected to wake up alone and get a text that the wedding was off. Instead, incredibly, Pia stayed with me. She convinced me to go to therapy, encouraged me through those first hellish sessions, and gave me space when I needed it. Therapy really helped. I was able to understand why I was feeling angry and upset, and how to deal with it beyond just trying to ignore it. I apologized to Pia earlier, but it let me actually be honest with her about my family. It really transformed our relationship. I took over the wedding preparations with the help of my in-laws. This turned out to be great for all of us. I got to actually design my dream wedding. My mother-in-law later told me she was really relieved that we switched, because my lovely Pia didn't care any which way about colors or flowers and had virtually no input on any of it as long as we were getting married. You might have realized from her post that she is pretty nonchalant and easygoing person. She used to joke that she was fine with just exchanging garlands and calling it a day. My mother-in-law was also very encouraging and patient in letting me voice my input, and even found things I didn't even think of but loved, like riding a horse to the ceremony. We have a running joke that I seem more like her son than Pia because our tastes are just so similar. And the actual wedding went really beautifully. Pia was ready to rescind my parents' invitations completely after everything, but her terrifying little sister suggested we invite them anyway as a sort of final FU, to show them I wasn't alone anymore, and no matter what they tried this time, things would go my way. I have to admit that did appeal to me, so we decided to invite them for the third day of the ceremony, and it worked even better than I imagined. First, it helped that my mother had no real idea what an Indian wedding is like, so when she showed up in a long white tulle ball gown, security actually thought she had the wrong address and didn't let her in. This was actually something I didn't plan, but the schadenfreude of seeing my mother fuming by the gate while other guests were let in was delicious. Secondly, compared to the embroidered silks and sleek satins of Indian clothes, my mother's ball gown honestly looked frumpy. Instead of stealing the show, she just looked like she didn't belong. This was accented by the jewelry, the matching churi and kungan, and earrings and bindis worn compared to her much more sparse look. Pia looked especially beautiful in her red lenga choli, with intricate henna covering her hands and feet. I'm probably biased because she is my wife, but she has the most beautiful inky hair and it looked stunning adorned with gaira and gold belai on her braid. Indian brides also wear something called a mathapati, which looks like a crown. It definitely made her look like a princess. I actually forgot about my parents and my insecurity and pretty much the rest of the universe because I couldn't stop staring at her. Then my mother tried really hard to interrupt the ceremony. First, she tried coughing, but luckily Pia's aunt sitting next to her gave her a cough drop. Then she tried to initiate a conversation, but Pia's 5-year-old niece loudly said in that high-pitched voice of children that really projects, "Don't you know it's rude to talk during weddings? I'm 5 and I know that." I later learned that she had been coached to respond this way by my wonderful, terrifying sister-in-law. The third time she tried to interrupt Pia's cousin, who had also been coached by the sister-in-law, jumped and loudly whispered that the food didn't seem to agree with my mother and needed to go to the bathroom immediately. I'm sure you can guess the implication. And basically pushed her away. After that, she stayed embarrassingly quiet for the rest of the ceremony. Throughout all of this, the Panditji never missed a beat and acted like everyone else wasn't there. In the after party, the difference between my mother and everyone else was unpleasantly accented by her ignorance of Bollywood-Tollywood dance skills, so she tried to refocus attention through conversation. She turned to my mother-in-law and started to complain about how hard it was to raise me. My mother-in-law, bless her heart, said, "However difficult children are, they bring 10 times as much happiness just by growing. Your son is such a wonderful young man, you must be so proud of him." My mother didn't like the direction of the conversation, so she turned to Pia and asked her if she was sure she wanted to be with me. This was after we had gotten married. Pia looked at her like she was a bit slow and said, "Would I be marrying him if I wasn't sure?" My mother loudly asked her again if she was really sure, because I used to wet the bed. I haven't done that since I was 8, but there she was, loudly announcing it for all and sundry. At that moment, I really hated her. It felt like there was something stuck in my throat, but no words came out. But Pia didn't have that problem. "You must be confused," she said, and it was with such confidence and a touch of concern that my mother actually looked like she was confused. Then she raised her voice so it could be heard over the music. "Dear my mother, I know we are a family now, but it's much too soon right now, or ever, for me to hear about your bedroom activities." Then she dragged me away to the dance floor, while people started to stare at my mother. Stupidly, the first thing I said in our first dance as a married couple was that my mother was right. But because I am the luckiest man alive, Pia just squeezed my hand and told me it happens when children are put under stress, and it wasn't my fault. That was pretty much the end of the problem. I enjoyed the rest of my wedding dancing, eating food, and talking with Pia and my now wonderful family. I did see Pia and sister-in-law having another talk with my mother later, but I was too far away to hear anything. It couldn't have been too bad because my sister-in-law smiled a lot, and my mother didn't try anything new for the rest of the party. By the end of the day, my mother looked incredibly constipated, but she hadn't managed to ruin anything. I felt so relieved when I said goodbye, like a weight had just slipped off my feet and my knees felt weak. It was the first time in my life that she hadn't taken over something that was supposed to be about me. After that day, I hadn't had any more sudden invasive memories of the past. I feel so incredibly lucky to have married this girl, and I feel like I might have done something really stupid after that fight if I had not seen so many strangers telling me the same thing until I couldn't ignore it. So in any case anyone was still following this, I wanted to post a thank you. I don't understand what mothers, mother-in-laws, or other wedding attendees think they have going to a wedding wearing white. Steal attention from the bride? Have people come up to them and ask them if they are the bride and being like, "No," while blushing? In my opinion, the only attention someone other than the bride wearing white to a wedding would get is ridicule, or maybe concern for their mental health, like in this case. The mother was absolutely delusional. Some people shouldn't be allowed to have children. What a satisfying story though. Shame it wasn't posted on Pro Revenge. I'm glad the mother got put in her place by everyone and OP and her fiancé had a great time. What an awful thing to try and take all the attention and in such vulgar ways. I wish him all the best with his new, better family, and I hope that him and Pia are happy together. What did you guys think? Ever had to deal with a crazy mother like this one? Let me know down in the comments. Be sure to also let me know if I got the pronunciations right, I was kind of guessing. Like the video and subscribe to help us keep the channel going, and I will be there in the next one. See ya!